The courtroom was thick with silence. Not the kind of silence that finds peace, but the kind that chokes. It was heavy, pushing against the walls, choking everyone within it. Each tiny noise boomed like thunder. Each rustle of a shoe, each nervous cough, each anxious breath. The air was electric, as though the whole room were holding its breath in restraint. And then it broke. The judge's gavel came down. Hard, sharp, final. The sound of wood on wood cracked out like a gunshot, shattering the tension and making each heart in the room jump. All eyes shot forward, drawn as if by gravity itself to the witness stand. And there she was. Robyn Brown. She didn't resemble the woman millions of viewers had watched on their televisions for years. There was no shy smile, no skillfully brushed ringlets, no gentle-spoken elegance designed to woo hearts. Today Robyn stood naked. Her hair hung loose in apron-like strands around her face. Her eyes puffy from tears she could no longer suppress. Her hands, knotted so tightly together in her lap, shook as if struggling to contain everything she couldn't speak. It wasn't only her body that trembled, it was her soul. And once Robyn Brown had entered the Brown family like a breath of fresh air. She had talked of unity, of love, of putting families together into a single work of beauty. She arrived with promises, with hope, with a dream that seemed too good to be real. But here, sitting in that courtroom, she wasn't the dream. She was the representation of everything that had not worked out, and everyone knew it. The gallery was filled with faces, both familiar and unfamiliar. Christine sat rigidly, her arms crossed, her jaw clenched into stone. Janelle had her eyes cast down, her face unreadable, although the pain there was in the way that she compressed her lips together, attempting to prevent them from shaking. Meri was sitting farthest away, her back erect, her face a blank, cold, nearly lifeless, as though years of pain had finally desensitized her. And then there was Kody. He sat at the defense table, his golden curls slightly askew, his suit rumpled, his eyes scanning anywhere but the direction of the witness stand. He had been once the hub of this family's universe, the father, the husband, the head, but today, even surrounded as he was by people, he seemed absolutely alone. This wasn't another hearing. This wasn't custody, or money, or property. No, this was something more, something rawder. It was about love and betrayal, about lies told and kept, about the ruining of a family that had vowed itself unconquerable. The judge pushed his glasses higher on his nose and leaned forward, his voice slicing into the tension like a knife. "Mrs. Brown," he said with authority, "you may proceed." And in that instant, something within Robyn broke. Her already shining eyes overflowed with tears. Not tears for her, but for what was lost. She parted her lips to speak, but her voice was caught. A single tear rolled down her cheek, onto her hands that were clasped together. She began again, her voice trembling, delicate as if every word was weighted with years. I never thought it would end like this," she breathed, her voice but a whisper, yet audible enough to cut across the silence. "I believed I was entering a family of love. I believed I was becoming part of something that's forever, something holy. But now," her voice cracked. She searched the room, her eyes locking with the women who had once been sister-wife to her. Their faces were pinched, but behind their eyes smoldered years of anger and loss and betrayal. "Now all I see is ashes." The room stood locked, as if no one dared take a breath. Even the cameras, silent, motionless bystanders, appeared to huddle forward. The air was so thick with tension, it was barely possible to breathe. Robyn's hands shook harder. She clenched them harder, holding her palms together in prayer, as if tight enough would prevent everything from falling apart. "I did not come to destroy," she began, her words stumbling. "I came because I believed. I believed in Kody. I believed in us. I believed that love could be expanded, that hearts could expand wider. I thought I was doing something sacred." Her voice became louder, stronger though she shook with emotion. "But now, I sit here and look at all of you, and I see nothing but pain. And perhaps," she paused, swallowing convulsively, her tears flowing freely now. Perhaps that's my fault. Gasps whispered around the courtroom. For years the fans had argued, speculated, debated. Was Robyn the favorite? The manipulator? The victim? But no one had ever seen her stripped to this core, confessing the very words no one believed she'd ever utter. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clenching. His hand twitched as if he'd rather reach out, but couldn't. Not now. Not after all this. The judge rocked back in his chair, his face unreadable, but his eyes keen, drinking in every phrase, every quiver of her voice. Christine's eyes blazed with anger, but there was a flicker, merely a flicker of something else. Was it pity? Was it a recognition of common pain? Or was it merely fatigue, after years of struggling the same fights? Janelle shut her eyes briefly, as if the words cut too close, hitting wounds that never really healed. Meri, however, did not flinch. Her face was chiseled from granite, her body rigid, as if any sign of feeling would shatter her into pieces. Robyn breathed deeply, shaking. I know what they say about me, she said quietly, that I came in and stole something that wasn't mine, that I tore this family apart, that I let others suffer, and perhaps they are right, perhaps I should have fought more, perhaps I should have shouted louder, but I swear, I never wished to be the cause for anyone to feel unwanted. Her words flowed out like a confession, her voice shaking but getting stronger with every word. I loved this family. I loved all of you. I wanted us to be more than a story for TV cameras. I wanted us to be forever. But now? She looked down at her hands again. Now forever feels like a cruel joke. The ensuing silence was not bearable. No one stirred. No one drew breath. There was only the faint, quiet wails of a woman once portrayed as villain and victim alike. The judge's throat clearing came uncomfortably slow, even to him. It was as if the intensity of her words had suffused every part of the room, touching not one but leaving them all achingly vulnerable. And then, softly, quite nearly too soft to hear, Robyn whispered something that hurt more than ever before. I don't know if I came here today to defend myself, or to finally admit that I failed. Her words hit like stones into quiet water, rippling outward, shaking each and every one of them to their very foundations. In that moment, it didn't matter who was in the right, who was in the wrong, who was at fault. What mattered was the irrefutable truth. This family, once held together by love, faith, and solidarity, was broken. And Robyn Brown, shaking on the witness stand, was the living, breathing embodiment of its destruction. The gavel fell once more, shaking the room back into reality. But the reverberations of Robyn's words remained, searing into the hearts of all those who listened. And as silence reasserted itself, heavier, deeper, darker than before, it was evident this trial was not merely about technicalities. It was about something much bigger. It was about the death of a dream. The ring of the gavel still seemed to hang in the air when questioning opened. The silence was shattered, and now the courtroom became something much more sinister than a stage. It became a battlefield, and at its center stood Robyn Brown. Her hands continued to shake from her initial words, but now the light was blinding. Weightier, this wasn't about her anymore. This was about guilt, about honesty, about all of the silenced voices for so long finally rushing free. The lawyer moved forward, his voice firm, slicing through the room like a knife through mist. Mrs. Brown, he continued, you've talked about love and unity. You've talked about your dreams when you came into this family. But tell this court, why do so many people think you're the reason everything broke down? The words strike like a hammer. Gasps flowed through the gallery. Christine's mouth opened, her eyes shrinking. Janelle fidgeted in her seat, her hands clenching on the bench. Even Meri, who had been a statue until this moment, let her eyebrows flicker, just slightly, as though even she could not contain her reaction. Robyn's throat tightened. She swallowed hard, her tears threatening to rise again. She knew this question was coming. She had prepared for it, but preparation didn't soften the sting. They blame me, she said softly, her voice shaking. They blame me for everything. For Garrison's distance, for Christine's heartbreak, for Meri's loneliness, for Janelle's exhaustion. They look at me and see the reason this family crumbled. She hesitated, her breathing thin, Her gaze wandered, for only an instant, in Kody's direction. He refused to look at her, his focus fixed on the papers before him, as if they contained the answers he was unwilling to confront. But I never set out to be that kind of person, Robyn breathed. The lawyer wouldn't let her rest. He pushed on, his tone cutting, purposeful. Mrs. Brown, are you claiming these other women, your sister wives, are in error? Are you claiming that you had no hand in this destruction? The room grew taut. Every ear hung a little closer, every eye fixed on her. Robyn slowly shook her head, her tears finally flowing. No, she confessed, her voice shattering. I'm not going to say they're wrong. I know what it's like. I know what I am to them. I know what it was like when Kody chose me over all the others. The words clung in the air like smoke, heavy and gagging. Christine laughed harshly, bitterly. Chose you? She exclaimed, her voice rising, shaking with anger. He didn't just choose you, Robyn, he left us for you. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. The judge pounded his gavel. Order! Order in the court. But Christine wasn't done. She spun toward Robyn, eyes on fire. Do you have any idea what it was like to sit there year after year and watch him slip away from me? To watch him lose interest in my children? To watch him lose interest in me? And you, she gestured at Robyn with a shaking finger. You just sat there. You didn't fight for us. You didn't fight for him. To stay, you let it happen. Robyn's face contorted. She shook her shoulders as she sobbed. I pleaded with him, she wailed. Her voice broke, rough and urgent. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to be resented? I pleaded with him to distribute his time fairly, to give you all love. I pleaded with him not to make me the favorite, but he refused to listen. He refused to hear me. For the first time, Kody raised his head. His eyes flicked back and forth, between Christine and Robyn. His face flushed with anger, with shame, with something unspoken. But he didn't say anything. He didn't explain. He just sat there, submerged in silence. The lawyer moved forward once more, his voice calmer this time, but as penetrating. Mrs. Brown, are you telling me that Kody caused this rift? That he is responsible for making you the focal point and leaving the rest behind? Robyn's tears came harder. She placed her hands over her face, her body trembling. When she finally spoke, her words were muted but understandable. Yes, she breathed. Yes, he did. But that doesn't make me innocent. Because I let it happen. The gallery exploded all over again. The air was heavy with gasps, whispers, the shock of hearing Robyn Brown, the reputed favorite wife, admit that she had let the downfall of the family happen. Janelle finally raised her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Do you realize what you just confessed, Robyn? She stammered. You confessed that you witnessed us drowning. And rather than stretch out your hand, you walked away. Robyn's tears were louder. I didn't turn away. She wept. I was drowning too. I thought if I clung to Kody he might pull us all back. But instead I was the reason he let the others go. Meri moved, her tone low but firm, slicing through the pandemonium like cold. No, Robyn. You didn't just hold on. You clung. You insisted he never let go of you. And the rest of us? We became ghosts. The words cut deeper than any sword. The judge hit the gavel once more. His face set. This court will have order. But order could not be restored now. The truth had been released. Naked and inescapable. The charges were not merely legal. They were personal. They were wounds torn open for all to view. The lawyer, taking advantage of the moment, posed the question that sealed the silence again. Mrs. Brown, after all you've admitted to, after all you've heard here today, do you think you ever were in a family, or were you just always the wedge that drove it apart? The room came to a stop. All hearts stood still. Robyn's cries subsided. She raised her face, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, her face shattered yet unyielding. I thought I was part of a family, she whispered. But perhaps I was the blunder that broke it. And with that, the courtroom did not merely have silence. It had sorrow. A sorrow so much weight that it pressed everyone within it. The tension in the courtroom was oppressive. Everyone felt it bearing down like a storm cloud that would not break. Robyn sat on the stand, her eyelids puffy, her hands shaking, her spirit crumbling under the load of every accusation. every truth that had finally been uttered. It wasn't about broken promises anymore. It was about shattered lives. The lawyer allowed her a moment to catch her breath. But even as she attempted to regulate her breathing, her chest heaved and fell with harsh gasps. Her voice shook as she started again, her words echoing across the room, like delicate glass about to shatter at any moment. I never wanted to take anyone's place, she said quietly. Not Christine's, not Janelle's, not Meri's. I wanted to belong. That's it. I wanted a family. I believed we could be stronger together. She hesitated, her mouth trembling, tears streaming down her face. Her gaze darted to Kody. He was motionless, his jaw locked, his fists planted on the table. He was a man who seemed to crave fighting back, who wanted to refute every statement, but within even he understood there was no defense remaining. Robyn took a sharp breath, her tone louder, her words heavier. I pleaded with him, she said. I pleaded with Kody not to make the others feel left behind. I begged him repeatedly. They need you too. But he wouldn't listen. He couldn't hear me. And now, we're here, in this room, because we're not a family anymore. The jury stirred restlessly. Strangers who had not a connection to the Browns felt the hurt seeping into their bones. Her words weren't practiced or honed. They were fresh. They were oozing. And then, without warning, Christine rose from her seat. Her chair squeaked against the floor, jolting the whole courtroom into stillness. Her face was flushed, eyes brimming with unshed tears, fists shaking at her sides. You begged him? She screamed, her rage rendering her voice quivering. You begged him? Don't you have the guts to stand there and act like you were helpless? Robyn, you witnessed it. You stood beside him as he left us. You saw him walk away from my kids, from me, and you did absolutely nothing. You destroyed us, Robyn. You destroyed us. The judge slammed the gavel, his voice firm. Order in the court. Mrs. Brown, get back into your seat. But Christine did not sit. Her tears overwelled, her voice cutting with years of anguish. Do you know what it is to be replaced? To see the man you devoted your life to gazing at you, as if you were nothing. As you. She shook a trembling finger at Robyn. Sat there smiling, as if you were innocent. Robyn's cries filled the air. She shook her head forcibly. No, no, Christine. You're wrong. I wasn't smiling. I was dying inside too. You think I wanted him to love me more than you? You think I wanted to be the reason he pulled away? I begged him to make it right, but he wouldn't listen. He never listened. Christine's face scrunched up. Her anger was still present, but underneath it was something else. Something rawer. Pain, betrayal, loss. She leaned back in her seat, her body shaking, her face hidden in her hands. The whole courtroom had become a reflection of heartbreak. Janelle finally broke her silence, her tone low but sharp. You tell me you begged him, Robyn. But what about us? Did you ever fight for us? Did you ever once stand and say, Kody, this isn't right? Because from my perspective, it seemed like you were happy enough to let us drift away. Robyn's face turned to her, desperate, her tears unstoppable. I did fight, Janelle, but you don't understand. Every time I spoke, he said I was overreacting. Every time I told him to split his time, he said I was nagging. I thought if I kept my mouth shut, if I just loved him, he'd sort it out himself. But instead, he picked me, and I hated him for it. Those words brought the room to silence. Even Kody winced. For the first time, Robyn had spoken not only of guilt, but resentment. The attorney leaned in, his voice calm. Mrs. Brown, are you stating that Kody's favoritism not only ruined the family, but ruined your marriage too? Robyn nodded slowly, her quieter sobs, but no less raw. Yes, she whispered. Because love isn't real when it comes at the expense of others. And I learned that too late. The gallery was in stasis. For years the world had declared Robyn the favorite, the wife who had captured Kody's heart at the expense of the others. But here, in this courtroom, she wasn't a winner. She was shattered, destroyed by the same love she'd believed would rescue her. And then, finally Meri said something. Her tone was icy, close to monotone, but each word was laced with years of betrayal. You wanted to be part of it. Robyn, you told me that. But being part of it doesn't include taking. Belonging is about giving. And you didn't give. You took every bit of him, until there was nothing left for the rest of us." The words fell like stones, weighty. "Forgiving not." Robyn cried harder. Her body convulsed with sobs as she whispered, "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to." Meri's eyes locked onto Robyn's, her own gaze narrowing. "Intentions don't count, Robyn, decisions do. And your decisions left me alone. Your decisions shattered Christine. Your decisions drained Janelle. And your decisions left Kody." She looked at him for a brief moment, her voice clenched. "A man none of us even recognize anymore." The judge's gavel struck again. But it barely mattered. The damage was already done. The courtroom had become a battlefield of emotions, with every wound ripped wide open for the world to see. Robyn, shaking uncontrollably, buried her face in her hands. Her cries filled the room with an almost deafening silence. She wasn't the perfect wife everyone watched on television. She wasn't the bad guy a few fans portrayed her as. In that instant, she was just human, shattered, vulnerable, and suffocating in guilt. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Some turned away, their faces pale as if the agony was too much to bear. Others inched forward, their faces etched with compassion, sympathy seeping through the tension. And Robyn raised her head, her eyes puffy, her voice strained. She spoke the words that hushed even her toughest critics. "I never wanted to be the favorite. I never wanted to be the last wife standing. All I ever wanted was to be loved with you, not instead of you." Her words lingered, heavy and definitive. The gavel came down again, jolting everyone back into line. But the truth was already out. This wasn't testimony. This was heartbreak, raw and inescapable. And for the first time, even Christine, Janelle, and Meri couldn't help but acknowledge the validity in Robyn's tears. The gravity of Robyn's words still hung in the air. The silence was not heavy anymore. It was oppressive. Everyone felt it bearing down on their chests, taking the air out of their lungs. Even the cameras, unforgiving and detached, seemed to pause, as if they realized they were recording something too raw, too human to be on a screen. Robyn sat shaking on the stand. Her body seemed smaller, somehow slumped, shoulders resting on her hands, as if they were the only thing holding her together at all. She paled as she clutched the other hand, hands meeting in a desperate attempt to hold herself together. For years she'd been the one everyone viewed as the strong one, the one Kody never wavered from, the one who never had to fight for his love. But here, in this courtroom, the facade had been removed. The lawyer leaned forward once more, his tone firm but also harder now. "Mrs. Brown," he said, "you've confessed to letting this family dissolve. But tell us, what does it feel like to be in the middle of so much fury? To understand that so many hold you responsible for the hurt sitting in this room today?" Robyn's lips quivered, her throat constricted. No words flowed for an instant, and then gradually, her tears started falling once more. "You think I wanted this?" she whispered, shaking her words, pleading. "Do you really believe I wanted to be hated? To be labeled homewrecker, manipulator, the cause everyone left behind?" She searched out across the courtroom, her gaze shifting to Christine, to Janelle, to Meri. Each expression was something different. Anger, sadness, coldness. But none were comforting, none were forgiving. "I just wanted to belong," Robyn whispered. "That's all. I just wanted a family. But instead, I was the one who made it end." Her crying cut through the stillness. They weren't the soft, controlled type of crying that can be concealed behind a tissue. They were harsh, guttural, violent cries, the kind that rattled her body and bounced off the walls. Even Kody, who up until now had said nothing, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His jaw tightened, his eyes flashed towards the floor. For the first time, he lost his confidence. He didn't touch her. He didn't stand up for her. He simply sat there, his hands clenched tightly together, his body tensed with shame. Janelle stood up then, her voice hoarse, exhausted by years of keeping her hurt to herself. "You claim you wanted to belong, Robyn," she spoke in a low but firm tone. "But belonging involves sharing the burden with us. Belonging involves battling with us. Not just for him." Her words hit Robyn more forcefully than any gavel could. "I did struggle." Robyn wept, her voice cracking. "But not loudly enough. Not fiercely enough. I believed that if I loved him enough, if I gave him enough commitment,
he'd share that love with all of you. But instead, he gave it all to me. And I let him. The gallery gasped. A few shook their heads. Others bent forward, as if they could not turn away from the unraveling woman before them. Christine slouched forward, voice shaking with anger and sorrow. Do you have any idea what that did to us? To our kids? Do you know how many nights I cried myself to bed because he wouldn't return? No, because he said he was exhausted, when in fact he was with you. And you knew. You knew, Robyn. Robyn's tears reached a crescendo. I told him it wasn't fair, she wailed. I told him and told him. But he said I was the only one who loved him. The only one who didn't turn him away. What was I supposed to do? Push him away? Tell him to leave when he didn't want to? Meri's voice cut through the air then, icy and cutting. Yes, she said curtly. That's just what you should have done. The courtroom fell silent. Robyn stared at her, wide-eyed, tears streaming down her face. Meri's face was unyielding. Her features were hard. But her eyes spoke of a woman who had been drained of everything by years of being neglected. You ought to have told him to return home to Christine. To Janelle. To me, Meri went on. You ought to have reminded him of what he promised. But you did not. You allowed him to remain. You allowed him to forget us. Robyn's chest heaved with deep breaths. She shook her head, her hands over her face. I couldn't, she cried. I couldn't push him away. Because if I did, maybe he would have left me too. The words silenced the room once more. For the first time, Robyn confessed the fear that had existed within her all along. That she wasn't strong. That she wasn't secure. That she held on to Kody not because she was selfish, but because she was desperate. The attorney stepped forward once more. His voice was calm, measured, but it carried the weight of truth. So, Mrs. Brown, what you're telling this court is that your fear of being unloved was greater than your willingness to protect the love of the entire family. Is that correct? Robyn froze. Her tears caught in her throat, her breathing coming in short gasps. She wanted to protest it. She wanted to struggle against it. But the truth was out already. Yes, she half whispered. That's correct. A communal gasp circulated through the gallery. Even the judge stirred uncomfortably in his seat, his face weakening a fraction. Christine hid her face, her body trembling with quiet sobs. Janelle held her lips tightly together, her ribcage heaving with deep, unsteady breaths. And Meri just looked at Robyn, her eyes hard, her heart encased behind walls too tall to surmount. Robyn's breakdown was total. She wasn't the favorite wife any longer. She wasn't the villain or the conqueror. She was merely a woman, broken, shattered, afraid of losing the one thing she believed she had left. Kody finally raised his head. His eyes glassed over, his face clenched. He opened his mouth to say something, but no sound escaped. For the first time, even he appeared to grasp the havoc he had wreaked. The judge's gavel fell once more, restoring order to the courtroom. But the order rang hollow. The truth was out, and nothing could cover it up now. As Robyn hid her face in her hands, and her sobs resonated through the courtroom, the world saw what she was. Not a savior, not a destroyer, but a woman filled with fear, regret, and a love that had cost too much. And in that moment, everyone knew. The collapse wasn't only Robyn. It was the collapse of a family. The courtroom had heard tears, admissions, and outbursts of rage. But now, silence was back. A silence so deep it seemed even the walls were holding their breath. The judge's gaze raked the courtroom, over Robyn's shaking form, Kody's impassive mask, the wives in a row of grief, and the children sitting in the gallery, their faces bearing wounds too deep to speak.
The judge raised her gavel a little, but did not ring it yet. She leaned forward instead. Mr. Brown, your behavior toward your wife was more than unkept promises. It was a pattern of disregard. This court cannot turn a blind eye to the evidence of exclusion, neglect, and fiscal impropriety that has surfaced. Kody adjusted in his seat, his mouth opening to protest, but the judge's glare shut him up. His now bright eyes seemed desperate, even pleading, but it was too late. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Meri Brown. The words exploded in the room like firecrackers. Gasps filled the air, some whispering, others weeping, reporters writing hurriedly. Meri's chest heaved. She covered her mouth with both hands as tears spilled down her cheeks. For the first time in years, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release. The judge wasn't done. Effective immediately, Mrs. Brown is granted sole ownership of the property, jointly held with Mr. Brown. In addition, restitution in the sum of $350,000 is to be made by Mr. Brown, recognizing the economic losses and unnecessary hardship suffered as a direct result of his conduct. Above all, this decision is made in respect for Mrs. Brown's dignity and her rightful status as an equal partner, which was not afforded to her. The gallery erupted once again. There was applause before the bailiff shouted for order. The noise wasn't clapping. It was the sigh of relief, the cheer for a woman silenced too long. Meri sat still for a moment, her brain whirling. She had prepared herself for disappointment, compromise, something less than justice. But she had been heard. She had been seen. Kody pounded a fist on the table, his face red with anger. This is not fair. This is all a lie. You don't know the sacrifices that I made. The judge's gavel came down with a loud crack, the report akin to a gunshot. Mr. Brown, sit down. This court has spoken. Your conduct in this courtroom is exactly the same as the arrogance and disrespect we have heard in testimony. Enough. The firmness of the echo of the gavel closed the deal. Kody slumped into his chair, vanquished. The patriarch facade had shattered irreparably. The world wasn't seeing a leader now. They saw a man without the mask, his pride bared to them. Meri rose slowly, her legs shaking, but her shoulders squared. She looked at her lawyer, who nodded at her proudly. She looked at the judge, mouthing a soft, sincere thank you. But above all she looked over the gallery, and there amongst the throng stood the family member who had given evidence. Their gazes crossed, full of silent solidarity. It was something no judgment could quantify, but it was everything. Meri raised her chin, her tears sparkling in the courtroom light. She had walked into this building, shaking, wondering if she could bear the burden. She was walking out with her head held high, her spirit intact, her truth confirmed. In front of the courthouse, reporters surged, cameras popping like lightning. Meri, how do you feel? Do you have a statement? She hesitated on the steps, surveying the throng. For an instant she remembered all of the times she'd remained quiet, all of the times she'd bit her tongue. No more. Her voice was firm, though gentle. Today wasn't about me. It was about every woman who has ever felt small, invisible, unloved. It was about showing that silence is not weakness, and enduring is not accepting. Today the truth prevailed. The crowd burst out, microphones pushed forward, cameras snapping wildly. But Meri didn't revel in the pandemonium. She just smiled, a genuine smile this time, and stepped down the stairs into the sun. Back in the courtroom, Kody sat still, looking blankly at the floor. His empire built on control and charm was in shambles. For the first time he wasn't the star of the show. He wasn't the boss. He was just a man who lost. And Meri? She wasn't the first wife anymore. She wasn't a secondary character in someone else's life. She was the hero now. The woman who had entered the arena of justice and emerged triumphant. The courtroom doors shut behind her, but the sounds of her footsteps lingered. For years those footsteps had weighed with solitude. Today they were lighter, leading her towards a future she long deserved, because ultimately it wasn't a verdict. It was freedom. It was justice. It was Meri Brown taking back her voice.